Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first virtual cabinet meeting on Friday, the 1st of May 2020. It's 3 p.m. prompt, and I'll just say a few words before we actually go into the meeting proper. As you are aware, this is our first meeting ever in the history of Kirklees, where circumstances has meant that we are now going to have all our meetings of cabinet in virtually until the restrictions of the coronavirus are lifted or things start to get better. Because we are all remotely logging in, there will be issues around minor glitches of technical nature. So please bear with us. What we will do is we will resume service as quickly as possible because we are in the hands of the broadband and the connectivity. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we should have a smooth meeting. It's not a normal meeting as such. This is our new norm. But it was important that we actually started to actually put some kind of democratic nature and structure back in place, beat by technology. The government enacted legislation which has allowed us to now do that. Based on the current crisis, it needs new leadership. And what I've done is over the last few weeks with my cabinet, we've actually introduced some priorities in terms of how we will address the emergency head-on, which I'll talk to you about later on. At the moment, we have a full complement of cabinet members. Councillor Peter Bride is not well, so his apologies. But we've got Councillor Viv Kendrick, Councillor Musrat Khan, Councillor Naheed Mather, Councillor Carol Patterson, Councillor Cathy Scott, Councillor Graham Turner and Councillor Rob Walker, who are all on this live conference call as we deliver it. Without further ado, item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Can we all agree that they're a correct record?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Item 3, if you've got any interest, please complete the forms that are with the papers and hand them in to the committee clerk afterwards via email, or you can post them through. Item 4, admission of the public. Like I said, as a result of the pandemic, we are not able to allow members of the public or the councillors or in fact meet each other because of social distancing rules. So hence we won't be running meetings as normal. However, legislation has meant that we can actually meet virtually. So for that reason, what we've done is we've asked members of the public and members of the council to submit questions beforehand by email, which we have got. We've got 12 councillors who have written in to ask questions, and we'll take the questions in turn as they have come in. And we've got one member of public who has asked 5 questions. Because it's only one member of public, I'm going to allow all 5 questions to be tabled, and I will answer them myself. So we'll move on to item 5, written questions. Andrea will read the questions. Once Andrea finishes reading the question to the relevant cabinet member, the relevant cabinet member can come in. I also understand after question 1, I will also ask Councillor Cathy Scott to come in because she's got some additional information which I think is relevant to question 1. So Andrea, over to you, please.
Thanks, Chair. So the first question we have is from Councillor Lukic, and it's to Councillor Mather. And the question is, Sands Lane, Sands Road and Hollingroyd Road in Dewsbury have long been fly tipping hotspots, and the problem is particularly acute at the moment. Will Cabinet introduce covert camera surveillance here and at other hotspots to help catch more perpetrators?
We have been monitoring the impact of fly tipping very closely in the current circumstances, and thankfully, due to maintaining our frontline services, we have not seen any overall increase. However, as the councillor points out, there have been some very localised impact on what were in general already known locations. For example, in the 3-week period between 24th of March and 13th of April, when the sites were closed, there were fewer reports of fly tipping than in the same 3-week period during 2019. However, I'd like to say that we continue to take fly tipping very seriously and have handed out 25 penalty notices in the last few weeks alone. We have in addition been working to secure a suitable mobile CCTV system to monitor hotspots locations and are finalising some details before moving to procure some to trial later on this year. This will help in tackling those known hotspots and bring those responsible to account. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The second question is also from Councillor
Andrea, just before, can I bring Cathy Scott in to just add some supplementary information, because she's got some local knowledge. I know Cathy's been working very hard over the last week in terms of addressing the issue. So Cathy, can I ask you to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Mathers. Sands Lane, Sands Road and Holling Road, we know they are secluded areas and often targeted by fly tippers. I've been working with officers and still remain working with officers on this, and we're looking at all different kinds of avenues. We need to deter the fly tipping in our ward, and whilst we want to put in measures in place, we have to make sure that we're not creating barriers for our own communities to get into, people that value and cherish the area. So we are looking at cameras. We're also looking at accessibility barriers. So if you think back, gone are the times now where we used to see fly tipping, the odd dumping done in less populated areas. It's now it's actually encroaching in where we live now, around our houses, in different areas, and this is happening across Kirklees. I think as a collective, we need to be working together as Kirklees and looking at a full policy on how we can handle this. We have a wonderful network of people in Dewsbury East that have been reporting this online through social media to myself and to all the ward councillors. And can I ask that if you see it as a general member of the public, name and shame them, ring the council, contact the police, and finally, but can I actually say a big thank you to our officers out there that have acted swiftly on this and immediately tackled the problems, given the times that we're in as well. They've gone that extra mile and got out there and done it. So bear with us. Sometimes it doesn't happen overnight, but they are doing the best they can. Our doors are open, we are listening, and Councillor Lukic, I'm happy to sit with you, talk to you, because it is an important factor in all our wards and across Kirklees. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cathy. Andrea, you may continue asking the questions.
Okay, so the second question also from Councillor Lukic, and it's addressed to Councillor McBride, but I understand Councillor Turner is going to answer in Councillor McBride's absence. And the question is, would you please provide an update on the review of car parking charges in Dewsbury?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Chair. So the car parking strategy is largely completed with an assessment of charges within that work. Officers have prepared a set of draft actions for senior managers and members, and we're in the process of disseminating this through the various structures we have, including the Town Centre Programme Board, senior leadership team, portfolio holder briefings. However, obviously due to the current issues around COVID, these discussions have slowed down somewhat. However, officers are currently reviewing how parking matters can help with the much needed revitalisation of the economy in Dewsbury once we get out of the current lockdown, and we'll move forward with that as soon as possible and as soon as it's practical within the current structures of self-isolation, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Thanks. Question 3 is from Councillor Lukic to the Leader of the Council, and the question is, under the devolution deal you have agreed, the Mayor of West Yorkshire is due to take over the responsibilities of the Police and Crime Commissioner. As the PCC election due this year is not taking place, do you agree that the post should now be retired in 2021 when the first Mayor is elected?
I think that's a very good question, and it's something that it really needs to be looked at very carefully. As the public will know, there was a Police and Crime Commissioner election that was due at the same time as the local election, but because of the current coronavirus pandemic, everything is put on hold, and that means that legislation has been passed, which will now mean that the election for both local and the mayor election will take place next year. However, on the back of that, that then raises questions regarding the issue that Councillor Lucic has raised. It's very early days. One thing we know that the election aren't going to take place this year, but what I will do is I will continue to talk to my West Yorkshire colleagues, continue to talk to government officials and ministers in terms of what is the best way forward. But I think he's got a really, really good point. We are in the hands of national government in terms of regulation, and there's other factors at regional level that play in. But I will take on his concerns, and we are looking at that very, very seriously. So once again, thank you, Councillor Lucic, for asking that question, but you have got a good point. Right, Andrea, next question, please.
Thank you. Question 4 is from Councillor Greaves, and it's to Councillor Turner. In regards to small business grants, by when will the outstanding claims be processed and paid out? Will the businesses who have not yet submitted a claim be proactively contacted?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Councillor Greaves. Grant applications are still arriving daily, so it's impossible to put a time when these will all be processed, because I said it's continually coming in. So, but up to date, we have now paid out £70 million to 6,400 businesses, and we're continuing to prioritise work to get these payments out to these businesses as soon as we can. Unfortunately, in some of these cases, it will take a little bit longer because sometimes the information they're provided with doesn't match our records. Sometimes we haven't got the correct information. But that work is ongoing. We did send out letters at the start of this process to all businesses that we thought were eligible, based on the records and information we held at the time. We've continued to publicise the message ever since the start of this, using social media and all our other media outlets. And websites, etc. And if anybody thinks they know of any businesses that are eligible that haven't applied, can encourage them to apply. There's no time limit when you can apply, but the sooner you apply, the sooner you can get your much needed money. Government have also realised that perhaps not all businesses are aware and have applied, so they're about to launch a national government campaign to encourage businesses to apply. That information will be going out from government very shortly. But at the moment, I can't give you an end date. All I can assure you is we are processing the claims as quickly as we possibly can, and to help the businesses get back on their feet. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Andrea, next question, please.
Next question, question 5, is from Councillor Greaves to Councillor Mather, and the question is, when will the household waste site reopen, and how will access and use be controlled?
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. We are working with SOAS who operate our household waste sites to reopen them, but we need to do so in a way which minimises risks to the public and our staff. We are also working with the other West Yorkshire authorities to agree a common approach and opening times. We have a draft operational plan, but before we can finalise it, we need to ensure that we are complying with the latest advice from DEFRA, which is due to be published sometime next week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, we have asked our officers to start working up details regarding planning to reopen our household waste recycling centres. But like Councillor Naheed Mather just said, we are awaiting the guidance that was supposed to have been released this week from government regarding the guidance to reopen our tips. The guidance hasn't been coming this week. I'm hoping that it will come out next week. So as soon as that guidance comes out, we will then have a look at it, and very, very quickly, I hope that we will be able to get our household waste recycling centres open, because that is something that we must do, but we can't do that without the government's guidance to make sure that we stay safe and protect lives. Thank you very much, Councillor Mather. Andrea, next question, please.
Question 6 is also from Councillor Greaves, and it's to Councillor Turner. In respect of the impact of COVID-19, when will updated revenue and capital budget plans be released?
Okay, so thank you, Chair and Andrea and Councillor Greaves. We all know we set a budget in February this year for this coming year 2021. We are currently assessing the significant impact of COVID-19 on the council's finances, and the Chief Financial Officer is bringing a report back to Cabinet on the 19th of May. With that will contain an update. This is very much a moving feast, so to speak, because things change daily, they change weekly, but we will have a bit more of an idea by the 19th of May what the impact has. We will, of course, continue to monitor everything we spend on the COVID-19 crisis, and we're making a log of that, and hopefully, as promised, the government will provide us with the resources to match what we've spent. But as I said, 19th of May will be the time when we have an idea of what the immediate impact is, and we may start to think about the long-term impact, because this won't impact just 2021's budget, it'll impact 21-22's budget, possibly more so in 21-22, but we are on with it, we're constantly monitoring, and we will have an update on the 19th of May. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Andrea, next question, please.
Question 7 is from Councillor Lawson, and it's to Councillor Mather, and the question is, can you put any figures to the amount of fly tipping clearances since the 23rd of March, the scale of any increase, and the amounts of identifiable domestic versus business waste? Related to this, are there any figures on calls to the council complaining about waste fires in domestic settings?
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. I refer to the information I provided in question 1, and also can I say that I'm not able to provide details specifically with regards to a domestic and commercial split. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Andrea, next question, please.
Thanks, Chair. Question 8 is from Councillor Lawson, again to Councillor Mather. The rise in domestic waste will have increased. What financial impact has that had upon refuse collection services?
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. For the period between 23rd of March to 29th of April, we have seen a year-on-year increase of 1,485 tonnes. This is predominantly attributed to domestic residual waste. The financial impact of this across the full financial year is yet to be understood. Our priority at this point in time is to continue to support our communities during this difficult period. And I would also like to thank our frontline workers who have been outstanding in keeping all our collection services going despite this increased pressure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Andrea, next question, please.
Question 9, again from Councillor Lawson, and this question is to Councillor Walker. How many reports of closed rights of way has the council received, and how many of these have been opened through enforcement action?
Right, thanks Andrea, and thanks Councillor Lawson for the question. The reports that we've received in relation to coronavirus have mainly been concerned with inappropriate signage, dissuading people from using rights of way rather than their physical closure. Of the 15 reports that we've received, 9 have been resolved already, mainly by actually replacing these inappropriate signs with the council DEFRA approved signage. And Councillor Lawson, you may well have seen that if you've been out taking walks in the area. They've mainly been about, the other reports have been about minor impediments to public passage. No formal enforcement action has so far been required, and work on other reported issues will continue. So we're working hard really to resolve this situation, but it's fairly low key. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Andrea, next question.
Question 10 is again from Councillor Lawson, and this is to Councillor Khan. The question is, do council home care staff who deal with the most vulnerable residents have sufficient PPE to do their job safely, and have they had appropriate training?
PPE has been an obvious challenge for almost every health and care organisation in the country. This has been a result of both change in national guidance and international shortages of supplies. There has been a lot of work in developing a local and a West Yorkshire approach to PPE supply to help improve resilience. Council home care staff do have access to appropriate PPE consistent with the national guidance, and there is a greater confidence in supply. That is not to say that there are not behind the scenes challenges, and there is some way to go before there is a sense of full confidence in the supply position. Staff do have appropriate training and are actively supported by the Council's Infection Prevention and Control team.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Andrea, next question, please.
Question 11 from Councillor Lawson, and this question is to Councillor Turner. Will money received so far from central government cover our expected extra COVID-19 spending?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Lawson, councils like ours, we're the ones that deliver services. Governments may set policy and operate at high level, but we're the ones that deliver services. So it's important that we do obviously get the correct funding. Right at the beginning of this, government did say that we had to spend what we needed to get through this to make sure our most vulnerable and those most in need were protected. And we expect them to fully honour that promise to compensate for this. So whilst we're pleased that the government has today committed 3.2 billion additional funding to help councils meet the significant additional costs being incurred, and our share of that is just over 24 million. We got some more last week, and we did all right out of that. We did better than some of our neighbours, so that was a nice surprise. However, it's clearly won't be enough. So not only have we got in additional significant spend, we also have the fact that our income generators have dried up. So all the bookings we take through town halls, car parking, all those sort of income streams, they've all dried up. So we're facing that significant income loss. So, but a very recent analysis undertaken by Sigoma, which, as we all know, is the body that represents metropolitan councils, they estimate that the eventual cost could be over 2 billion to local authorities, and that obviously the money to date is not enough. So we need some more money as and when, and hopefully, as I said earlier, they will honour their commitment. But some of this will be, as I said earlier on one of the other questions, some of this won't come to fruition until 2021-22. So we are as I said earlier, we're keeping a record, and we'll be going back to government saying, this is what we spent, you promised to support us. So yes, we will be pushing government to make sure that we fully meet all our costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Andrea, next question, please.
Question 12 is from Councillor Lawson. This is addressed to both Councillor Khan and Councillor Kendrick, and the question is, can you highlight what is being done to ensure vulnerable adults and children continue to get the protection they need during lockdown?
Thanks. Staff in both adults and children's social care continue to actively work to ensure that vulnerable residents get the protection that they need during lockdown. A number of the ways in which this is done have had to change given the circumstances, and both safeguarding boards have processes in place to continue to seek assurance about safeguarding. There is, however, a concern that the factors that make abuse and harm more likely in normal circumstances both remain, and potentially they are more prevalent in the current context. For adult social care, Gateway to Care continues to operate as normal via remote working to provide advice and support. We had recently completed a major piece of work to develop and operationalise an online approach to safeguarding referrals. This was particularly invaluable for care homes. Given that CQC inspections are suspended at the moment, we have put in alternative measures in place in relation to safeguarding for care homes. And these measures include greater use of technology and direct phone calls to residents and their family members. We recognise that the current circumstances place greater pressure on informal carers and continue to actively support informal carers both directly and via local carers organisations. In addition, services such as library service are making regular contact with more vulnerable library service users to offer support and reduce the risk of harm occurring. Cross-referencing of the council shielding list of residents against the people known to the council has taken place, and that we are aware of particular individuals who may require additional support at this time. We have been supporting a significant campaign via our Into Care team to recruit additional staff into the care sector to enable providers to be resilient, and have made additional payments to social care providers to help support their viability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Kendrick's next question.
It's the same question, Chair, I think, only in relation to children's services. We are fulfilling our statutory responsibility, but of course, in some aspects, these are being delivered differently. Our front door and the emergency duty team staff are working from home and calls are directed direct to them, but they then operate within their normal operating procedures. So, for instance, these are incidents where perhaps an issue is raised for the first time. So should contacts raise serious issues, social workers go out to visit families, and of course the emergency duty team provide this service out of hours. Children and their families are seen, risk is identified and plans are put in place to ensure that the child is safeguarded, and legal proceedings are still continuing where necessary. And added to that, team service manager and the team managers review the contacts to ensure that they're dealt with appropriately and timely, which is absolutely key at this point in time. And team managers are working closely with the police to ensure that domestic abuse incidents are assessed and managed appropriately, and schools are notified. For those cases, and Councillor Lawson will be well aware of a large number of contacts and cases we have, so that social workers continue to visit children who are identified as at risk, so that's children with a child protection plan, children in need, children in the care of the local authority. And team managers and service managers have risk assessed each case to ensure that those most at risk are given priority. Care planning meetings continue, but virtually, rather like this meeting. And issues like the risk and vulnerability team have pooled resources with youth intervention to deliver management and intervention for young people at risk of exploitation or gangs. Maintaining our approach to asylum seeking children is still a key issue that we address. We support them in their placements, and visits are being continued and risk assessments updated. Personal advisors are continuing to visit care leavers, and again those identified as most at risk or having greatest vulnerability are given priority. And we've done things like deliver food parcels, including toiletries to those who need them, and care leavers have some extra financial payments made by the authority where they've lost a job or they have greater heating and other expenses because they're at home all the time. I mean, there's a whole list of other things, and if Councillor Lawson wishes to have more detail, because the breadth of children's services is so large, I'd be happy to send those out to all councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Andrea, is that the questions from members?
Yes, that concludes the questions by elected members. Yeah. So. And
there's some questions from a member of the public. Do you want to just ask me the question and I will answer them?
So these questions have been submitted by Christine Hyde to the Leader of the Council, and the first question is, are you including the costs of community COVID-19 contact tracing and isolation in your estimates of the financial impact of COVID-19 upon the Council?
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Hyde. You're probably aware that Matt Hancock last week said that he will be aiming for a target of 18,000 trace and test for contact tracing by the 7th of May. I think that's the right thing to do. I think there's also another issue that you need to get community contact tracing to actually eradicate any risk or minimise any risk of another pandemic taking place. So that's why what we are doing is we are making sure that we actually log every single thing we do. and we will be including the cost for community COVID-19 contact tracing and isolation in our estimates while this pandemic is going on. So the short answer is yes, we will do that. Next question, Andrea.
Thanks, Chair. The next question is, are you setting up a community contact tracing and isolation strategy pilot or initiative in Kirklees? If not, why not? Will Kirklees Public Health be in the driving seat? If not, why not?
I think first thing I need to say is we will do everything in our power to make sure that we fight this pandemic, and we will work with every single partner, be it nationally or locally. That's why we are already working with West Yorkshire local authorities in making sure that we get this community contact tracing in place very, very quickly. We are also working with Public Health England and Yorkshire and Humber to make sure that any modelling that's done actually takes full account of any impact. Because unless you get the track and tracing and identifying and the right models in place and look at what the trends are, it's got to be a holistic and a total approach. In some ways, we are actually at the mercy of national government. But having said that, we are still lobbying to make sure that we actually do that local community contact tracing, which is so important, and we will do everything we can to carry on doing that. Thank you. Next question.
Next question is, what are the current COVID-19 death figures for Kirklees, including people who have died in care homes and at home?
Okay, thank you. These figures are as of 17th of April 2020. It shows that there were 129 deaths in Kirklees where COVID-19 was mentioned in the death certificates. Of the 129, 21 were in care homes, 9 were at home, and 99 were in hospital. Next question.
Next question is, as you will know, West Yorkshire and Harrogate Integrated Care System has announced a fund to support community level interventions that reduce gaps in health outcomes for population groups in West Yorkshire and Harrogate. The focus is on groups who are most vulnerable to the direct health implications of COVID-19 and the indirect social implications of the control measures such as isolation and shielding. Does the Cabinet support this fund? If so, please will you explain how this grant, which will apparently fund voluntary and community organisations' efforts at social prescribing for those most negatively affected by COVID-19, is in any way going to tackle these upstream causes of health inequalities?
Well, of course, I, along with all local authorities and everybody out there who are trying to actually address and fight this virus, will welcome the £450,000 that has been allocated through the West Yorkshire ICS. But £450,000, I feel, is not enough. I think we can always do with more cash, especially on the back of something that we have never seen before. Health inequalities, poverty and deprivation is already prevalent in our society. And one of the things that I've seen is the people that have been hit the most are people who are living in deprived communities, people who are already living in poverty. And when we come out of this, we will need to make sure that the hundreds and thousands of people who are already in poverty, who are now even worse situation, are actually helped in the best way we can. So social prescribing is not, I don't think it's a given. And again, it all depends on what the bidders put in their bids. But what we can do is we can actually engage with the voluntary community sector. What we can do is we can also engage with our communities and make sure that the resources are used most effectively. And we also need to make sure that through the national health responders and the volunteers that have come forward, we actually pull everything together to make sure that we get the maximum impact with the resources that we are getting, which are limited in nature. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. And the final question is the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee going to do a health inequalities assessment of the Coronavirus Act 2020, or is the Cabinet itself doing this?
It will be the Cabinet. Cabinet will take responsibility to do any impact assessment of this virus. Right, thank you very much, Andrea. Is that the last of our questions? I think it is.
Yes, Chair, that's the final question.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6. Before I bring Julie in, because of the nature of the pandemic and the way we had to go into isolation, that meant that we had to stop our council business function because legislation was not around that enabled us to move forward. So under the delegated authority, decisions were made in consultation with myself and the chief exec and me talking to other leaders in my own cabinet. So what Julie is going to do now is she's going to talk us through the key decisions that have been made under delegated authority. And then I will bring two of my cabinet members in, Graham and Muz, Councillor Graham Turner and Muz Khan, who will ask questions. So Julie, can I bring you in now to just take us through the details of the decisions that have been made over the past few weeks? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. For the benefit of those watching the live stream or a recording of it after today, my name's Julie Muscroft. I'm the Service Director for Legal and Governance, and I'm the Council's Monitoring Officer. As the Chair's already alluded, this item on the agenda asks you to consider, amongst other things, the decisions that have been taken during this pandemic period to date, and particularly those which have been taken by the Chief Executive using her emergency powers. And it asks in particular that you note and endorse those decisions as you're required to do under the Constitution. It also describes the change in emphasis of your own roles actually during that period which you're undertaking as Cabinet members to help support people, place and partners in this difficult time. As the report suggests, and as we've already talked about already, we're now able to hold virtual meetings. So it means we're moving into a different phase where Cabinet and hopefully soon other council meetings can start to be held virtually and decisions taken in that way. As I've said already, Constitution requires that it's necessary to report back to you on decisions which have been taken in this period by the Chief Exec, which otherwise would have been considered by yourself. As you'll see in the report, we've had to use emergency powers as well as other delegated powers as officers to take decisions so that we're able to continue to function as a council because you weren't able to meet until the new regulations were put in place. We've done this by prioritising decisions which needed to be made, and where we've been able to do that, we've delayed decisions. Some of those will probably appear on further meetings of virtual cabinet in future. So we've only relied on delegated powers where we've needed to do that. I in particular want to draw you to your attention to 6 decisions which have been made by the Chief Executive, which would have been considered by you otherwise. As you'll see the main report, and for members of the public, there were 5 decisions referred to in there. A further decision has been taken since that was published online, was taken by the Chief Executive this week, which relates to homes to schools transport. Details of that are now actually on the website, so if anybody's watching this and would like to see it, they can access it there. But it relates to changes to a home to school contract. As you'll see, the decisions were, as I said, ones which would already which are already in the Council's forward plan. So, for example, the decision relating to the West Yorkshire devolution deal and the Highways Capital Plan, all of the others were as a direct result of or a response to the current pandemic. So the changes to non-domestic rates, council tax and the homelessness housing proposals. And as you're aware, there's already a decision to change your own role. The report asks for you to endorse and note the decisions taken by the Chief Executive, please. The original report refers to only 5 appendices, but you need to obviously refer to all 6 of the decisions, please, in agreeing this or considering this. You're also asked to note and endorse other actions, including the decision log. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. I hope you stay well. Thanks, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Jolie, for that comprehensive update. Before I go and ask other cabinet members for approving the vote, can I bring, or going for the vote, can I bring in Councillor Graham Turner, who wanted to say a few words?
Yeah, Chair, thank you very much. I just want to reassure the other elected members and members of the public that the decisions taken by the Chief Exec on the delegated powers were taken in consultation with the Cabinet, yourself as well, and there was a lot of discussion around these. So they were taken in good faith and with our fully support. Just like to mention a couple of things on Appendix 3 and 5. Appendix 3 obviously covers a business rates scheme, and this hopefully will help support our local businesses as they struggle with the current lockdown situation. We have been very proactive in ensuring that businesses that qualify for this scheme are helped as quickly and efficiently as possible. SMEs are the backbone of the Kirklees economy, and we must do all we can, and we will do all we can to help them through this period. We need them at the end of this to help us create a vibrant local economy, not only for the benefit of the council, but for our residents. Appendix 5, as Cabinet is aware, we agreed to enhance the provision for the government scheme for those most in need and the most vulnerable. And we believe this is the right thing to do. We have also set aside £1 million to help meet the anticipated rise in demand as the council COVID-19 crisis continues to impact on our residents. Demand on the local welfare provision will be closely monitored, and if additional funds are required, we will lobby government to provide extra funding to meet the needs of our residents during these very difficult times. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Graham Turner. Councillor Musrat Khan, can I bring you in? Thank you.
Can I just take this opportunity to commend the swift and decisive action taken by the leadership to approve additional support to social care providers, helping them to manage pressures caused by the COVID-19 crisis and helping the social care providers to remain operationally and financially resilient. Can I also quickly just take the opportunity to also thank social care our workforce. We know that for those working with vulnerable people, the current situation can be a time of uncertainty, change and stress. Ensuring that we deliver the best standard of care and support continues to be our main focus, and we are proud of the flexibility our workforce are showing to get the job done despite all the challenges they are facing. And we are have an immense amount of admiration and gratitude for our social care staff, in fact for all our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Before we go to the vote, I'd just like to update the public in terms of what we have done. Just to reflect back, since 23rd of March, life has changed so much in the few weeks that have passed, that our lifestyles have changed. The way we live has changed, the way we socialise has changed, and the challenges still remain. And like I said earlier on, these are unprecedented challenges that we are facing, and we will not come out of this in a way that will actually normalise things again. So what we need to do is we need to focus on the future. We need to focus on how the Cabinet now starts to look at developing a new kind of leadership. And what I've done in consultation with the Cabinet is to develop some new priorities for the Cabinet in terms of taking the emergency forward in terms of how we respond once we come out of lockdown. So what I've done is, on top of the Cabinet roles that already exist, I will be taking a leading role in the immediate response to the pandemic, leading on the recovery and engaging with Public Health England. Councillor Peter McBride, who has given his apologies, will be looking at immediate support to business and also planning the post-pandemic inclusive economy. Councillor Viv Kendrick will carry on having responsibility for the statutory role for children's services and a focus on safeguarding most vulnerable kids in our society throughout the pandemic. Councillor Musrat Khan will maintain responsibility for the adults and social care element of the statutory role, responsible for vulnerable adults, for social care and safeguarding our most vulnerable adults throughout the pandemic. Councillor Carol Patterson will look at working with schools to maintain services and how we can start to plan that return to school. It'll be a complete new climate in terms of where we go with our schools. Councillor Graham Turner He will oversee the financial recovery, financial oversight and the resources. We will need a new financial plan as we move forward. Councillor Cathy Scott and Councillor Rob Walker, what I've asked them to do is to engage and support the voluntary sector and look at the capacity for the immediate responses to the pandemic and strengthen the place-based working for the future. So Cathy will be focusing on North Kirklees and Rob Walker will be focusing on South Kirklees. So with that as a backdrop in terms of where we are going in terms of the future, can I move the recommendations as tabled in agenda item number 6? Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Move.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I second it, and make sure that colleagues include the last item, which was the payment of operators for passenger travel, so that's not missed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Viv Kendrick, for that. Andrea, do you want to now take us through the voting process to make sure that we do everything that is required of us legally?
Thanks, Chair. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. If we could just now then go to the vote. If members could indicate for, against or abstain, please. Councillor Pandor?
For.
Councillor Kendrick?
For.
Councillor Khan?
For.
Councillor Mather?
For. For.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor Scott?
For.
Councillor Turner?
For.
And Councillor Walker?
For.
That's carried, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. That vote has been carried. And without further ado, I'd just like to say a few words before we finish. Stay safe, stay at home, and only travel if you have to. And please enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.